Welcome back into the mental game, where this week's guest is country singer Tana Matz.
That loss, you're the only one that really gets how shattering it is.
And in this episode, Tana opens up about chasing her childhood dream in country music, where she moved to Nashville and has been there for years, playing in bars and restaurants, but now is going on tour and truly living out that dream. We talk about the ups and downs of the music industry, but also her personal life and her mental health, also relationships, all of that and much, much more in this episode. But if you're loving the mental game, please like, subscribe, rate, review, tell your family, tell your friends, as we try to help as many people as possible with their mental health. But now it is time for the latest episode here on The Mental Game with Tana Matz. Welcome back into the mental game. As you can see, I'm joined by a very special guest, singer-songwriter here in Nashville, Tana Matz, and you're actually a Cincinnati native. That's why I got my Bengals gear on.
Woo!
We've known each other for a long time.
And
this is a nice reunion here on the podcast.
Really
Thanks for having
is.
me. We're at your house. It's a beautiful space.
Oh, you're so sweet.
And you have an off
Thanks
night?
for coming here.
Oh, yeah.
I do have an off night.
This
is great.
Do you miss playing on off night or?
No.
No? Okay. You love music. We're going to get into that a lot in the episode. First thing I ask everyone on the mental game is, what does mental health mean to you? And everyone has a different answer, whether it be something that, you know, they figured out at a young age, or maybe there's a traumatic event throughout their life that made them take more care of their mental health. But I ask you the same thing. What does mental health mean to you?
Oh man, that's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, mental health is so different for everybody individually. I think these last couple years for me, mental health really played a huge role into that, and just just trying to like stay the path and take like the good out of situations.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing that's helped me the most, is like, what good is here? Like, there's good in everything. So does that answer the question?
I think
like,
it does. Oh, everyone has their own answer. So you definitely answered the question.
I mean, yeah, I think everybody's just got a different journey. And, I think no matter what you're in, like you can find good and like come out of it somehow, some way. But it's just different for everybody. Luckily, like, I've done some therapy. I'm not prescribed anything at this point in my life, but I think being alone for myself has
Mm-hmm.
been really helpful. That doesn't seem
Like being comfortable with yourself, like being alone?
Maybe I think that I recharge really well when
Mhm.
I'm by myself.
Okay.
Like when I can kind of cut out the world and really like sit with myself and say, why does this bother me?
Yeah.
Why is this triggering me? Like really ask myself those things and give myself the time to go into those things. I think that's where I personally find the most healing. Because I've in my experience, when I've gone to therapists, I feel like they just agree with me. They're like, yeah,
Sounds good. And
that's
then time's
valid.
out.
That's valid. I'm like, okay, so everything I think is valid.
How do we fix it?
Let's go deep into this. So yeah, that was probably a long-winded answer to that question.
No, it's a good answer. We're going to dive a lot into mental health, obviously, on this episode. But music is also a big thing for you. Music's like therapy for me, but for musicians, everyone I talk to, it's like therapy for them. When did you discover music being something that was more than just a song you'd hear on the radio? Like as a kid, do you remember when you first fell in love with music?
Oh my gosh, I fell in love with, I've always been in love with music.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the first time that I knew that I wanted to do something with it, or that it intrigued me, was I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I remember seeing Britney Spears on the TV. I think it was the Baby One More Time video.
Yeah.
And I looked at my dad and I said, I want to do that. That's so cool. It was either that or I started playing on my xylophone really early.
Okay.
I could like hear songs. I could hear like, oh, this sounds like this. And the first song I played was My Heart Will Go On, Celine Dion on my little xylophone. So it was like it was either of those two, but I think they were around the same time.
Do you remember just like that feeling of this is for me or this is what I'm meant to do?
I think that started for me when I was in high school. I had my very first heartbreak, and I found so much healing in writing my very first song. I guess like at that point, I didn't know how to reach out to people. I didn't know how to like ask for help with things. And so I was bottling a lot up. And when I released all of my thoughts and feelings in that, it was just like, whoa.
It was like therapy for you being able to write. I mean, you hear a lot of people talk about mental health, like journaling. That's a very strong thing.
Yeah. I think it's very
do.
Similar probably.
Yeah. And so for you going through that first heartbreak at 14, 15, 16 years old.
Something like that.
And just stupid boys.
Right.
And but it gives you this peek into something that turns out to be one of your most powerful traits, passions, and what you do for a living now.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Just insane.
And so discovering that in high school and seeing that you can do this for a living, it can be a career, like how cool was that for you?
It's the biggest blessing I've ever had. I knew like when I was 18, I was making like a great living playing. I didn't know that I was making a great living at the time, like playing live. I didn't know the math. I was just like, look, Mom, I made like, $500 at this show. How cool, you know? But then when I really did the math and I was like, okay, if I did this like 3 times a week, like I would be making more than what I'm going to school for or what I plan to go to school for. So I never took that for granted. I always knew like this is kind of a rare thing to already have something that you love so much at a young age.
Right. Well, and you mentioned school there. How was that decision hard with, you have this passion of music, but I believe you went into nursing.
I did,
and so like balancing those two things and deciding to go all in on the music and not take the, healthcare professionals have a very, very, tough job, something they're passionate about. They're hardworking, crazy hours. Obviously with 2020, it was crazy. But those are two different career paths. One's something that a lot of people...
I know. Why did I do that?
Well, it obviously paid off.
It did.
But it's me. I sat there. I could have worked in, I don't know, communications or been a media director somewhere. But instead I wanted to pursue sports reporting and be on camera. Like being a musician, that's not your 9 to 5. That's not being a nurse. Like how hard was that decision for you?
The decision to do both or like,
okay.
Well, I think for me at the time, it was easy because all I really wanted at that time was something that I could never not have a job with if I needed it. It was such a fallback plan. It was like, if I'm ever if I think anything's possible. And you'll find so many people in this town that'll say, if you have a B plan, like you're not into what your A plan enough.
Yeah.
I think that is ridiculous because COVID happens.
Yep. And what else are you going to do?
Yeah. For me, I was like, this is exactly why I have this. It was the one job that if you wanted a job, you could go find it so easy. And so, that was, I think I chose nursing because I do love people. I care for people. I'm a nurturer and I also have a science brain and a science math brain too, as much as I think the creativity is more. But when you're going through school, I was like, I love math, I love science. So
I was the complete opposite.
Really? Yeah, believe it or not, I hated English. Like all the things that I use now every day, I'm like, that's so funny that worked out the way. But for me, I was like, this is a very and I was able to go to school for very reasonable. I went to I ended up changing over to Cincinnati State. I got my degree for like $10,000. I paid it off that year, So it was like, here's a degree I can use in any kind of probably like catastrophic time. And I'll never not have a job if I need it.
Right.
If for whatever reason my vocal cords go out, if I'm a single mom or something, you know, the craziest situation happens, I could survive.
But your music career started to really blossom. You're getting to play gigs at 18 around Cincinnati, around Ohio, and do super cool things that people wait years and decades to do.
Yes. I mean, it was and I did all of that. I never stopped music. I was always doing, I've only really nursed probably with COVID 1.5 years of my life. Actually used that degree. It's expired now, but I should probably, you know, keep it. But yeah, the beautiful thing about the music was that I really didn't need the B plan.
Well, when music starts taking off for you and you're able to make it your career more than just and playing gigs around town, that's a really cool thing to do, and a lot of people do that in the music industry.
Yeah. It's more lucrative than people actually realize too.
Yeah, and you're able to make a living, do something that you're passionate about, but then to make the big step and move to Nashville and really, really chase the dream at the doorstep of country music. How crazy was that? How exciting, scary, walk me through all those emotions.
Oh man, that was a wild time of my life for multiple reasons. Like just personally wise, that was a wild ride, but it was a rude awakening. You know, you go from, I grew up in Reading, Ohio, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And my grade school class, we had 17 people, boys and girls, you know? So coming from that pond, you know, I felt like a good sized fish.
Yeah.
You come here and you're like, where am I?
Yeah.
And I needed that really bad. There was a lot of growth that came from that was necessary for me.
Did you feel intimidated?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that you hear that a lot when it is, you know, musicians moving to LA or actors moving to LA or musicians moving to Nashville, people moving to be on Broadway in New York City. When you're a musician and you move to Nashville to pursue a country music career, what are those first few months like?
What the heck do I do? Who the heck do I talk to? And how in the world am I going to survive here?
Just because you have to make money,
you
everyone's
have to make
talented.
Money.
Like
it's where the money that I was making, like say in Cincinnati playing gigs or whatever, you can't make that here like that. I mean, I've dug my way to where I could, and like I know where to go, but you definitely have to. You have to make very solid relationships here because there's so many of you. Yeah. And there's so many people willing to play for nothing, you know?
Right.
So it's like you really have to stand out and kind of create your space, your place where it makes sense for a venue and you just go for it, I guess.
Was there any times that you did think about quitting music or moving back to Cincinnati when those first few months were probably a little rocky of trying to find gigs, make money? And
No. Well, and for me, I was a little luckier because I did buy my first property. And right when I moved here, I was determined. I was like, I'm not paying rent anywhere. I'm going to own. I'm going to let my property appreciate. And my roommates are going to pay my mortgage. So that's what I did.
You're a businesswoman. She'd be on Shark Tank.
Maybe one day. That would be awesome. But no, so I knew that I didn't have to make that much. You know, I was kind of here. It was kind of just like a time investment. It was like, you're living here for free. You need to make enough money to eat and do the things that you want to do. Yeah. But that was kind of it.
From then,
so I was lucky.
Yeah, no, and
blessed,
lucky. I think it says blessed behind us.
It's everywhere in this house.
That's one of my favorite words. I also like things that start with B because my name is Brandon.
Yeah.
But
go B.
There we go. The music, when you start to see it like work for you, and you're able to have shows where people come out and sing your lyrics or see the downloads go up and, or I know like sounds weird, but you see people follow you more on social media or recognize you or tell their stories to you about how your music relates to them.
Yeah.
How powerful has that journey been? Because for me, watching from the outside, and I've known you for, I think, 10 years now, yeah, it is wild. We're old. These last 5 years, it feels like you've really started to really take off.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch.
That means a lot. Yeah. I mean, it definitely pays off. It makes it really great. This last tour, going out with Miss Alexandra K. I adore her.
Say you love her. She's your BFF,
I love her.
right?
I love her so much.
Yeah.
Yes. That is a girl I would do absolutely anything in this world for. The moment I met her, I was like, I want to do whatever I can to just, support and root her on. But she was so kind to take me on a tour with her.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first show, I was not ready for this.
Uh-huh.
It was a show in Detroit. We were at a venue called St. Andrew's Hall. It's a big venue, a lot like Bogart's.
Yeah.
In Cincinnati. I'm used to playing to a room of 50 to 100 people. Sometimes they pay attention. Sometimes it's dead quiet. Sometimes they're all talking. It just kind of it just depends. But I literally, when I say I got into the crowd's view with just my shoulder and my foot, and they went crazy. I mean, I'm like,
that's so damn
I'm like,
cool.
is that because I did that? And they were like, yeah.
That's so cool.
And then you go out and they're just all singing. At the beginning of the tour, they weren't really singing my songs. I would see a few people. I'm like, oh, they listened. They know the words. That's awesome. But then we would sing the song that Lexi and I wrote. It was one of her first songs that took off on TikTok. It was her first #1 song on iTunes.
Oh, wow.
All genre. And so everybody knew all of the words to that. And we got to sing that. And just thinking, like, we wrote this song, like, it took, I think it was either 2 or 3 writes. I'm thinking, we wrote this song like at my kitchen table in Antioch, Tennessee. And now here we are, and they all know the words, and there's people crying, and like, what's happening? It really makes it all worth it for sure. You're just like, okay, I'm so glad I just stuck it out. And so that was a right. I remember that was a right. I didn't know who Lexi was. And you have a lot of those where somebody's like, hey, can you come hop in on this? And you're like, I'm tired. I'd kind of like to just chill out today,
right.
But I'm going to say yeah, because you just never know. And that was one of those rights. And here we are. I mean, my life literally would not look the way it does if I hadn't said yes that morning.
And you write that song, now you perform it on this past tour. You're going on tour
again
with her again. How, like, when you're standing on stage, and I love watching your videos on TikTok and Instagram and seeing the pure joy, because just like I'm passionate about what I do, you're just as passionate about it. Yeah. And so getting to hear and see people sing those lyrics back to you and it be such an emotional connection, that, you already said it, but that has to be exactly why you had this dream as a kid and now you're getting to live it to its fullest.
Yeah. Crazy to say that. But yeah,
the smile on your face says it all. And something that, like, I noticed too with your music, and I want to get into the mental health side of this too with you, is that you are a very I don't know if open book's the right word, or emotional writer. Like, you put your heart and soul into it, which I think most musicians would say makes the best music.
Yeah.
And that's because you've gone through different things in your life, whether it's been personal things, relationship issues, or, just different obstacles in life. And I've gone through a lot of relationship stuff myself, so I can understand the lyrics as well. But how do you balance personal life and music? Because they do mix and cross, and sometimes they make some of your best music. Yeah. But on the flip side, because you're going through a really tough breakup or something bad in your personal life, you might not want to go to the studio or go write.
Yeah. That's a really great question. I think for me, when I'm in relationships historically, I have put my career kind of to the side. And that's something that moving forward I won't do.
Yeah.
I've just made that decision. Like it's my career first, and like, or at least heavily still integrated in my life.
Yeah.
And really prioritized, or I'm just by myself, you know? So I feel like a lot of times when I've exited those relationships, I have so much that I want to get out that while it is really hard for me and I do feel, you know, depressed or just not in that place, I know that doing those things is going to be really healing for me.
Yeah.
So it does help. And and especially like this last relationship, my life, it was my life was so unhealthy at that point that when it was over, it was immediately better. Like I felt a like relief just like right then and there. Whereas I feel like a lot of relationships, and Lexi and I we're talking about this today actually, like, you know, a lot of relationships, you know, you're just heartbroken after. This, I was like, I'm better. Like, now. And I hate saying that. Like it sucks to say, but that is the truth. I was like, I can be myself again and not feel like I'm getting the third degree or like I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. I can just be me. So I think it's just kind of different per situation, you know?
Well, and like for me, my relationship stuff was like a toxic breakup and toxic relationship. And it sounds like you had maybe some of the same vibes or feelings or just the way the relationship ended. And we talked about before we started doing the podcast is that we're not going to dive into specifics with relationships, but I think people can relate to stories and they like to hear how you feel and how you get through it. And for me, I've always had this like alone feeling, and I've dreamed of like, I thought I'd be married by 25 and have kids, and I'm about to be 30 and I'm nowhere close to being married or dating at all. Like I don't even date anymore. It's just, it's wild to look at your past and the things that you've gone through, because in those moments, they seem like the end of the world and you might be super depressed. Or for me, like I was suicidal after my last breakup, and it was a really, really hard thing to go through. But once you get through that really, really low point in your life, you're able to look back and say, oh, this wasn't healthy for me, or this wasn't good for me, or I'm better being myself. Like, how has that journey been for you? Because you've had a lot of ups with music. You've had some downs with music. You've had different things happen with relationships. Being able to weather that storm and finally be at a place where you're comfortable now being by yourself and feeling like you're true you, how powerful has that been for you?
Oh my gosh, so powerful. Like you said, you're like, I don't even date anymore. I'm like, me either. I have the dating apps on my phone, but they give me the ick. Like I think,
finally got off that crap. It's so
okay. See,
bad.
I still have this anxiety that if I delete them, I'm like, I'm gonna like miss out on like my future husband. So like me deleting them.
Yeah, but how many dates have you gone off of Hinge or Bumble?
I mean,
are you a dateaholic on the dating apps?
I had like my moment where I was like going on like a date a week, but then I was like,
you got it like that.
I was like, I don't have time for this. Like I gotta focus. You know, I would find myself on the date thinking like, I just want to go home and work.
Right.
Like,
well,
so
and I think when you're, and this isn't like talking smack about anyone, you know, you and I
we don't want to do that.
That we've been on dates with or dated, but like when you've been so close to like finding the person that you think you're going to spend the rest of your life with, or like for you, you've been married before, it's really hard, even though you look back and there were some things that were wrong with that relationship, obviously why it didn't work out. But it's really hard to like date when you've been that close to thinking you had the one.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like that whole thing where people are like, I can't believe I have to go back to dating and talk about my favorite color. You know, you're like, like, oh, so, you know, it's just all the superficial stuff. You're like,
well, and I think this, I think it's something for me too. And I don't think I've really talked about this out there before, is it's like, you almost try to like find what you had in the person you're going maybe on a date with, like, or that you're dating at the time, like stuff that you like.
Yeah, maybe.
But like,
sure,
you're not going to find that because it's a totally different person, and I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
No,
But
I agree with that. I've definitely done that before. I think me right now, I'm like not in that mindset though.
Yeah.
Like I might have my first crush right now. Like
Really?
since everything. Yeah. I can't believe I just said that.
All right, well, it's breaking news on the mental game.
It's definitely a secret.
I said, let's drop a name. Let's get some.
But like this crush or whatever is like so different than anybody that I've ever entertained ever.
Have you guys?
And that's why I like it.
All right, well, we're going to get
He doesn't even know I have a crush on him.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then that's.
But, you know, here's why it's cool is that I didn't think that I could ever like somebody ever again. That's how much I loved my ex. Like I literally told him, like, if something were to happen to you, I don't think I'd ever be with somebody else. And I meant it. Like, you're it. Like, this is all I've ever wanted. Until it was all I didn't think it was.
Right.
But so for me to have a crush is like, whoa.
Right.
I actually, like, it still works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
like, this is such good news.
Well, I'm excited for you. And
Thank you.
That's like, for people listening and watching, that proves the point of like, you can be heartbroken and go through the toughest shit, but then also still have that hope in the end, or get over it and find something new. I do think it's important to touch on past, because people listening can relate to
100%.
things that you've been through.
Yeah.
You've been married twice, correct?
I have.
How old were you the first time you got married?
I think I was 23.
When you go back to look at yourself at 23 getting married, what can you think about that and that relationship, I guess?
Yeah, you know, I look back at her, the 23-year-old girl, and if I could say something to her now, I would just say, you don't even know yourself yet. Like, you please see your full potential before you do things like this. And that's, and he honestly was a really great person. We just, once I could see my potential, we were going in absolute opposite directions. You know, he kind of wanted more of like a small town life, which I love too, but he would have been very unfulfilled had I brought him here. And I would go home for the weekends, and I would love to be back home. And, you know, I love being a homemaker too. I love cooking and gardening, and, you know, I love all of those things. But I would feel so empty when I would go home, because I feel like I'm also not pursuing what I feel so called to. So, you know, it was really kind of a mutual thing.
I think there's a lot of people in relationships that are afraid to pick themselves and their passion and what they want to do just because they're comfortable in the situation they're in. What gave you that ability and motive on your own to be able to break away from that? Because I think a lot of people get comfortable and just live that way for months, years, decades in relationships.
Yeah. You know, I think the thing that drives me and really always has in like my decision making is when you're 80 one day and you're looking at your family and your grandkids, if that's something that you're blessed to have, but you're looking back on your life, right? Do you feel like you gave what you wanted your all, or did you not?
Right.
Because at that point there's no going back. And, you know, so I think that I looked at that and was like, I'm gonna be so sad. I'm gonna feel like even if I don't go anywhere with it, I have to know I tried. Right.
Well, and you're doing it, and you take that step, you move to Nashville, you pursue music, and then you get married again. And
dumb girl.
Look, I'm not here. I'm not Dr. Phil. I'm just trying to help, you know, people that listen that have been through
absolutely
different relationships.
No, this is so good. This is so good.
What felt right? What felt wrong in that relationship? Why? How long was there between the two marriages?
There was 4 years, 5 years between the two.
Before I forget,
yeah.
Do you just fall in love easy? I'm not discrediting those relationships, but I'm a very big romantic person. I feel like I fall really hard. Would you think that about you?
Do I fall easy? I don't think I do. I don't know.
Okay.
I guess it's so subjective.
Yeah, I didn't mean to ask that in a weird way, but
I don't fall in love easy now. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah, you get heartbroken. You get heartbroken like that, and I'm the same boat.
Here's the thing. Here is what it is. I see people's potentials. Mm-hmm. When I see someone and I'm like, they're amazing, or they can be, I fall in love with that.
Yeah.
Smart people and just talented people, I'm like, they're incredible. So I think maybe that's part of it.
Yeah. Well, and that wasn't me trying to be like, hey, you've been married twice and you fall in love easy.
No, but I do love love. I love the idea of having a beautiful partnership. I love the idea of working together with somebody and creating a family and, being role models for people, maybe I am like a hopeless romantic or was.
I'll put myself in that category.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm there again or I guess we'll find out. But I do know that moving forward, it has to look different for me.
Yeah. Sure. Well, and how did the way those two relationships ended and affected you, how did that like change your look on relationships? Because it sounds like you had to come to a realization that those weren't good for you, and maybe your last relationship was toxic in the end.
Yeah, definitely. So your question was how has that
changed your outlook, I guess, on relationships, or how you date, or?
Oh yeah, it definitely has. I think the last one really made me, both, but I think I started figuring it out prior to my last relationship, but I think what I have now that maybe now the nail's just like really in the coffin is listening to my own intuition, not other people. I read this book and it said that women before making a decision will ask every other woman like what they should do. And they don't listen to themselves. It's so true. You'll be like, he sent this text, like, should I say this? Or is it normal that I feel this way? Like, would you feel this way? And it's like, well, do you feel that way? You're allowed. Yeah, it's very valid.
Yeah.
you know? And I think more than just women are that way, but, I know that I was that person for sure. So I just started realizing like, hey, you need to start listening to yourself, because there were things that, I wish I listened to, that I knew, like, you might be in danger. Mm-hmm. And I gave myself logically, like, every reason why I wasn't, because I wanted it to work, You
use the word danger. I just want to unpack that.
Yeah, and you know what? That's probably the wrong word for that. It was probably more like, this might not be the right thing for you, but you're like,
thanks for singing on that too.
I really want it to be the right thing. So I will make excuses.
Yeah, no, I think that's very common in relationships, that you want to work.
Of course.
I want to point out a post that you put out there on social media. I think it was a month or two ago now, where you opened up about the last 2 years of your life, and it had a lot to do with this past relationship, other personal struggles you've had. Why do you feel like it's so important for you to be open about your emotions?
I think in that moment, I knew that I was silencing myself for a long time because I didn't want to make anybody else feel uncomfortable, where I knew that I was going to be writing and getting creative with my life and what had happened, and I was going to be putting it into song for people. So I wanted people to have somewhere to go to like see, okay, this is what this is coming from. Mm-hmm. This is And also like the amount of, I was so scared to post that. Like I am almost shaking thinking about how scared I was to post it, because I didn't know how certain people would react to it, but I had to stop thinking, like, I had to realize, like, this is my perspective. Mm-hmm. This is my truth of this. And other people are only going to heal, and you're only going to help people if you're just honest about it.
Right.
Because it's such a dark, yucky topic that most people just hide, and that's why we all feel so alone. Is just there's like just a lack of transparency. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was why I felt like I had to do that.
I respect you a lot for putting that out there, because it does help when people can feel relatable to their favorite musician or just a friend or a family member. I want to ask you, what was your hardest moment with your mental health?
What was the hardest moment? I would say, well, it was probably during my last relationship. I have to think about how I want to say it. It was probably in that, and my faith, because I've always been such a God girl.
Yeah.
I think it was a moment during where I was like, if this is what God wants, I don't know if that's my God. Like, yeah. So it was that moment where I was just like, I wasn't sleeping. I was like physically ill. What I thought was like gonna be the rest of my life and my fairy tale and my happily ever after turned not to be so happy at all. Right. And not only that, my faith, that was like my rock all my life, was just shaken. And I was at the point where I was like, I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know what I believe in or anything.
In your last relationship, one of the things that you opened up about was that you were pregnant.
Yeah.
Walk me through those emotions of finding out that you're going to be a mom. Oh, man. And then heartbreaking news of that not happening. Yeah.
Yeah. That was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. I think that's the worst, like, acute pain that I've ever, not physically, but emotionally, just like the moment you find out, it is like your whole world's just shattered, Finding out I was going to be a mom was like the most exciting thing ever. I was like, immediately I went into like hustle mom mode, and I was like, I'm going to write all these songs and I'm going to release all this stuff because I got to show my kid that like they can do anything that they want in life. And, you would think that I'd be like nesting and like, oh, I'm just going to settle down now. No, I was like, I'm going to go be like superstar mom. Right. and it was really exciting. I've always wanted to be a mom. I hope that maybe one day I get that opportunity, but I am honestly very thankful that I got to have that little bit of time with, he or she or whatever it was. Like I told you before, I knew that I was pregnant, like I knew that I was pregnant like 2 weeks before you could even detect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that first test was like negative, and I was like, it's wrong. Give it like 2 days, it'll be right. Like, I mean, it was really like a very spiritual experience for me. And while I wish that I was a mom today, and sometimes I still feel that way, I'm like, somewhere out there's, the energy of what was going to be my kid. I'm glad that I got to experience that, but I do know that my life would not look how is now. And I'm very, very, very thankful for where I am now. But still hard.
Yeah, no, and life's all about perspective. But I have to imagine, what were you told? How difficult was that news and those days afterwards?
Oh my gosh, it's the loneliest thing ever, because nobody's ever going to understand, unless they've gone through it, how heartbreaking it is. Because, and two, you know, even for like a father in that situation, it's not in their body. For them, you're just pregnant. There's no like baby yet. I think for a guy, that there's no baby until it's born. That's like the moment that they feel like they become a father.
Yeah.
But you immediately become a mother. You're like, oh, my whole life is revolved around this now. Like,
yeah,
my diet's changing, my vitamins are changing. You immediately go into like, I'm protecting my kid.
Yeah.
So that loss, you're the only one that really gets how shattering it is. Because everybody else too is kind of like, well, you're not married, so it's kind of a good thing. That's one of the things. I had people literally tell me, well, God just couldn't bless it because you're not married. The things that you hear from people are like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Like, it's a strange battle.
Did those comments eat at you when you just had the most heartbreaking news?
I'm just like, I'm just not going to talk to you much anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not the kind of energy that I want in my life.
Well, you have some of the most positive energy I've ever been around. If you're watching at home, you see the smile. If you're listening, you hear the laugh.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I try to be. But I do mean that. And I'm so
Thanks,
happy
Brandon.
for you that.
You too, though.
Oh, thank you. We're just going to sit here and compliment each other the whole show. But I'm so happy for you that life has taken a better turn when it comes to your music, you being happy, being single, being yourself, loving you and loving your career. What's next for you? How are you looking to tackle the next step in your career?
Yeah. I mean, so we're going back out on tour. Alexandra invited me to come open for her.
Go.
More. So excited. We're so excited. Before the whole tour started and everything, I'd just been writing songs, and part of the game is having like the finances to do it.
Right.
And so, just kind of got myself in like a place where I can be consistent with the creation of the music, because it's not cheap. And, so I just learning about marketing and all of the things that I've kind of been missing pieces on.
Sure.
I've just been focusing on creating good art that I really believe in, getting it out there, being consistent with it. And I'm so excited for that. And just writing has really, when I moved here, I didn't think that I liked writing as much as I thought that I did, but I have really fallen in love with it since. And, I think, I'm just gonna work hard and see where the path takes me. Well, it always surprises me.
Well, it's been a good surprise the last couple years watching you, and you and Alexandra on tour together have been crushing it. If you don't follow Alexandra or her on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, like, go do it, because it's so inspiring to see you two living your dreams out there. And that's why I just wanted to ask two more questions. One, dream-wise, goal-wise, is there something that's out there that is still in that young girl that fell in love with music that you still want to go accomplish?
I would love to play the Grand Ole Opry at some point.
Yes, I love that.
I've actually never really said that to anybody, but I would. I've had an original sung at the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
Alexandra did that. That was actually a really crazy thing, and I talk about that during my set on the tour. But I found out that she was gonna sing at the Grand Ole Opry, and she was gonna sing our original song 2 days before the divorce was final with my last relationship, and she sang like 2 days after. I mean, it was really kind of the most cool, like, spiritual timing to me, because at that point I'm like, God has to hate me. Because that's all I really heard was, you know, like, this isn't godly of you. And, you know, so I'm like, oh, my life's probably going to crumble now, you know, because they're probably right. And, you know, so getting that call and it just divinely happening around that was such a turning point for me, and was like all of the hope that I needed. Like, okay, you've now been divorced 2 times and you're not even 30 yet. Like, way to go. Like, you know, like this just sucks. But to have that timing happen, it was like God saying, I still love you. Here's like the best thing that's ever happened to you. Literally. It was crazy. So that really, I needed that. I mean, I think I'd be fine. I'd still be here.
Yeah, but it's life-changing motivation, isn't it?
It was life-changing motivation that, I mean, I will never forget it. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that happened that way. Really, it changed my outlook with everything. And you know how I said I didn't really know God? And I was just like, well, I don't know who that is anymore, or like what life is. I was like, I know exactly who he is. It's exactly who I thought he was.
That's an amazing story of something that you think is going to crush you and might have in that moment, but then you're able to find something beautiful out of it. It's like, you know, I was so depressed and suicidal and didn't know what to do with life anymore. And then I found a new path with the podcast and being able
I'm
to do
so proud of you.
Oh,
this is
you.
just like, it's the coolest thing. We were talking about this before, but I'm like, I'm such a fangirl. Like, I just like send me anything you post, because I just want to like, favorite, comment, woo, you know, like, let's go.
You need my hype woman.
I'm on, yes. Like, that's what friends should do.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's clicking buttons. Like, you don't even have to text me or call me or like ask about my life. Like, just
like, retweet,
so
repost,
easy.
share.
It's so easy.
Shout out Debbie, my mom. I call her by her
Go
first
Deb.
name. Deb has been my number 1 fan. You can be number 2 if you want.
Sure, I got you.
That is so cool for us to be able to see each other grow, support each other, and that's been super cool for me. One last thing I want to ask is advice to someone that wants to follow your footsteps and maybe is an aspiring musician in high school or in college or just moved to Nashville. What advice do you give to them?
Ooh, gosh, this business is so complex.
Yeah.
Choose your circle wisely. I think that's, you know, with anything.
Yeah.
Be around people who see the good in you, who speak life into you, because the opposite can slow you down and get in your head and make you stop so fast. So surround yourself with good people. Hone in on your craft, you know, like I think writing is really important. It depends what you want to do. You know, there's so many things you can do. You can go be a backup singer. You could do all kinds of things. But if you are going to be an artist and you're going to write your music, go get uncomfortable. Go be really uncomfy and learn from it. Throw yourself into the tough stuff and just learn to, I don't want to say deal with it, because that sounds just so like get over it, kid. But I mean, it's a tough business. I was such a delicate flower coming into this. I was so sensitive and, you know, just like, oh, you know, they said that they don't like how I sound, you know, and they're like, oh, you know, it's the end of the world. But I was just on a live, when I was with AK, and AK is Alexandra, when we were on tour and somebody had gotten on my live and was like, you're nothing, or you might have actually been on it during that.
On TikTok in the dressing room?
Yeah. Somebody was being mean. And, you know, and it's just like, at some point, you're just like,
who cares?
It's just words, you know, like what you think of me is truly none of my business.
Right.
And you just, I think that's a tough place to get to. You know, that takes a lot of, especially for me, I grew up like a little delicate flower, like I said, you know, I was so under a rock and protected and whatnot. It's just, you know, getting some thick skin. And, I think just getting yourself uncomfortable
Well, you've done a very good job at that.
You have too. You have too.
Trying my best. This has been so fun to get to talk to you and have you on the show. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
And I can't wait to see you. You're awesome. We just hype each other up the whole show.
I know. Let's go. Let's go.
All right. Love you. Good having you on. And we'll see everybody right back here next week on The Mental Game. And that was an amazing conversation with Tana. Like you heard right there, we have stayed in touch over the years, and I am so proud of her. It's been awesome to watch her achieve her dreams in country music. And once again, Alexandra K is taking Tana on tour right now. They are coming to cities all across the country. I'll be seeing her live next week here in Cincinnati. So if you have a chance to watch her and Alexandra live in concert, go ahead and grab your tickets. You can find them on Tana's social media pages. Coming up next week, right back here on The Mental Game, it is another surprise guest, but your one hint this week, it is a college basketball coach. That is your one hint. We'll see everybody right back here next week on The Mental Game.